Totanda Dinaloya Tanji Tsamshabanashi, any Duja Rani Las Tomar Koal Tandu Chinji Malowachi, Mate na Zawachebes. Did Tarbar Jitter Sina, Tig Tar Zawa Digi Samotan Tanji Malavina, Anna Tarval Titan Contigiores, Taval Titan Yomares. Did Kovina Raniki Chug Danyane Tampuchi Kavan Gozu to Slavina, and Tapa Tuning Law Gemma Imbegichi, Gemaji Gavelayam, Tashi Chego Yadochi. Did you Chumbaina? Any Shending Laya, Sinji Shing, the Zoyang. 아니 코알 코르데가지 통원도 전에 아니 콘주기 최체당다 냠낸 체당 나로라양 타바 되니 그 상도 딘디지 메나 한 콘주 랑가 티에 타빈도 냠매 공주 전에 신이 지기 라마지기네리 로마지기네리 팔이 셰베네 수냠낸 셰베 고축서되는 쪽으로 왔어.
As we left off in the last session, why, if his disciples failed to develop a proper determination to liberate themselves from psychic existence first, they would sever the very root of liberation. How then could he lead them to liberation? So the real heart of the matter, when you're setting out to engage in any Dharma practice, really needs to have this desire, this striving to achieve liberation. Without that, then there's no Dharma practice. And so whether it's we need to generate this very first, or we need to develop this strong intention to become free from samsara, to achieve liberation. It doesn't have to be that uncontrived desire for liberation or striving for liberation, that it has to be this really strong, firm intention to become free, to achieve liberation. So then we need that within ourselves, and then also when we look at others, so without that, then there can be no method to lead people to the state of liberation. So without that strong desire within oneself, there's no teaching that we give, and nothing that can lead us to that state of liberation. And likewise, when we look at others, whether they be a spiritual teacher, a lama, or the student, and you need to look at their practice and their training, and if it's not with this underlying motivation, striving for liberation, then there's no way to lead to that. There's no teachings or training that can be given that will lead to liberation. So the very heart of the matter, the very main point we land on is this: that that you need to have this strong striving for liberation. So the Buddha asks why, if his disciple failed to develop a proper determination why, if his disciples failed to develop a proper determination to liberate themselves from psychic existence first, they would sever the very root of liberation. So this develop a proper determination to liberate, that's that really strong desire to become free, this strong desire for liberation. Without that, there's no way to lead them to liberation.
So this, because this is so important, so in the future, maybe some of you will now try to get more teachings on Buddhism, try to look for the path. So you will go for a long journey, actually, to what I'm trying to say. On that kind of journey, you really need to check with the teachers how much that teacher is emphasizing on that. If this is not emphasized, then how much other teachings you received? Then it's a bit of like the bubble, water bubble. sound looks so good, and for a few seconds it goes down. But all the other teachings will come once you have quite a good understanding of this. Without this, how much you... I think this is known as the one of the biggest preliminary practice. So this is why if you, some of you who took some teachings from the great master, and then maybe your master will say, do wonder, to do some preliminary practices. Ultimately, you have to hear this one. This one is needed. The rest, it will automatically come out. Whatever, bodhicitta, emptiness, whatever. But this is missed, then all you think it's like so many information, unnecessary informations. Once you feel this is necessary, then all others will just follow from that. So this becomes very important. Here, Lama Tsongkhapa, he says, if this is not there, then the disconnected stage failed to develop. The rest, he will not say failed to develop. On this one, he says, if you fail on this, then you fail on develop. Then there's how much. If I can say, if the realization is not coming up, okay, how much you practice on emptiness, impermanence. But if you don't have this understanding, the realization won't be there. Why? Because you don't have this thirst that this morning when we went through that example. Once you don't have that kind of thirst, and then you feel like I need to have the antidote, water. So then the doctor says, oh, drinking 2 liters of water is necessary. No, many people are not going to drink that. But if you feel like in the desert, you walk for a few hours, and then you have even 2 liters of water, you feel like so precious. Why? The reason is, in the before it's dinang yobatanda, karsa kombi dungye shiwa la tumde chungwa di kombi dungye la mindebe namba thoma ra de kombi dungye. I don't want it, karsa di English nala.
The desire to relieve the suffering of thirst is based on saying that you do not want to be tormented by thirst.
I don't want to be tormented by the thirst. That is very strong. That is needed. Similarly, whenever you practice, I don't want to be tormented by this suffering again. That is your position. Then every time if you watch your mind, when you request teaching, you know how to request the teaching. You will not request the teaching like give me this initiation, give this sort of a very powerful. You give to one of your favorite student, give this teaching to me. Not like that. You will always know whatever other people are taking, but for me, this is necessary. I kind of learned that from one of my teachers, because one of my teachers one day, I requested him to give some teaching on a bodhicitta. And then I was waiting with all this question, then I was waiting with this book in the middle of there, it talks a lot of bodhicitta, so I feel like I'm really enthusiastic to generate bodhicitta. And I was waiting for the answer, but he started talking about the 8 worldly concerns, how to tame this kind of mind, or the appearance of this life, this kind of attachment to your identity, this sort of reputation, how it really stops you to practice Dharma. If I do this, what will people say? If I do this, all these worldly concerns. He's talking for almost 2 hours. So I thought, what happened to him today? Everything good? You need something to clean? So, and then my teacher said, today I couldn't answer your question because I was so, this morning I was making a huge prayer that may I find a teacher who can say that I'm really practicing how to overcome the 8 worldly concerns, because this is something I wanted to practice all the beautiful and the powerful, all these teachings I received from many masters. I wanted to do it, but what is really blocking me at this moment is the 8 worldly concerns. So I don't have a courage to move on because I am chained by this 8 worldly concerns. So my teacher was always giving me this teaching, which I didn't request, or he looks like he's really enjoying. And I felt like, when is he going to answer my question? So that time I learned something. No need to rush, but we really need to go by the stages. So similarly here, in this the chapter in this book, the most something that it has a light just in front of you, showing some signal where to focus, is this one actually. So this is very powerful. Dicheta tene maji oncheta to sloshinda. Shesumba tarasta jipochi niki mijuruchela. Dini yang takorna dewa mayimbi dunelo she dungi namba tuma suni. Kyoji go dungi deba toma sunsos. Dini gachi motum to kajensen she dungi namba tuma suni kyoji go dungi deba toma sunsos. Yang takorna dewa mayingi is. Dewa maris yang takorna dewa maris. Yang taparana dewa mayingi dungeros. Dina judu, dina duwe.
By saying this, by saying in fact this cyclic existence is not happiness but suffering, the Buddha explained many forms of suffering and led his disciples to become disenchanted with cyclic existence and recognize it as suffering. As this is a necessary precondition, the Buddha spoke first about the truth of suffering. This is a very important point. So, like seeing that in fact this is not happiness, but suffering. And shall I repeat that 2 or 3 times?
No. As a suffering, we cannot say at the moment it's suffering, but it feels like as a suffering. So sometimes you got such a bad news, how much you are enjoying normally, whatever your activities you're doing, what you got this bad news, then it turns everything unpleasant for you. Right? This happened to us many times, right? So similarly, as on this practice, so once, up to now maybe you feel like, wish I wanted to become like him, or wish I wanted to become like that successful person. I wanted to have this kind of achievement my neighbor has got. This is our way to compete with others. Wish I can have that, we can have that. But then once you feel, it's a never-ending story. How much you get, but there's some satisfaction, and it leads to another. You buy one and you get 10 problems together. So then you feel like, where is that really coming? It's from this, the root of the samsara. If I cannot challenge with that, then there is no peace. So then from that day on, in the three principal aspects of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa, he says, the day and night, then you feel, wish I can get a liberation. Then it's a pure sign that you got a renunciation. Not just having disgust by some situation, but in many of us, when you feel it's not going as your wish, and then you say, oh, the karma. If it is going as your wish, then it's not a karma. It's like, oh yeah, I did it or something. But if something not going as your wish, then you say it's a karma. And then you will say like big things like samsara. If something pleasant coming in your life, it's not samsara. You make this kind of a judgment here, but to be honest, so once you feel like it's pleasant, unpleasant, everything is built on this, through the influence of this negative emotions and this karma coming. This is coming by this kind of force, this kind of influence. Then you could say, I had enough of this. One time, a few times actually, it came to me, because one time I visited one of my teachers, and then he was watching a television, and watched together the planet, what's that, planet Earth, and we saw the small mosquitoes, and then the frogs coming to eat the eggs, and then my teacher go, ooh, then my eye go like, yeah. And then reaction was there, and then we stopped the television, and then my teacher said, this is our future life. So I couldn't say no. What will you do now? What should we do now? And then we went in and then discussed about Dharma. It was powerful. Because normally we switch on the television and then start looking and judging other people, the news, the world, and then the world is becoming crazy. That prime minister, that president, he's going crazy, nuts. But we don't apply the people who are dying there, people who are doing something bad things. This could be in our next life. So we don't want to become like that. And then if you wanted to make this kind of judgment and make this kind of a decision that I don't want to become like that. So now this is the borderline, we need to act. So this is becoming so relevant, this teaching. So then you see how much you say I'm enjoying, but deep inside you will say how much you are enjoying, but you are in samsara. How much you are in samsara. And this echo should be heard every time. And then, if you don't, also at the same time, if you don't apply for the antidote, then it is tiring. It is more like, what to do? I'm helpless. But once you focus more wishing to get the water, not now you are just thinking like I'm being tormented by suffering of not getting water. Because tormented by thirst.
By thirst.
Yeah. Not only thinking that, then you find like there's a water. So then wish to get the water is the solution. And each and every minute walking towards that water becomes your path, your hope, your destination. And then this morning when we say Deyada Gade Gade Para Gade Para Samgade Buddha is the steps are there. So there's hope. That's why His Holiness Dalai Lama is coming in a very simple form, human. Now he's in 90s, not giving much teachings, but huge smile. Still, why we respect him so much? From the beginning, he gives this teaching on a bodhicitta, and emptiness say, "Oh, it's so tiring," like what we really wanted to see in our mirror. We feel that, oh, so tiring. He says, oh, it's so tiring. I spent so many years. Oh, then slowly, he changes the way of teaching. Then he says, if I put a little emphasis, I feel like it's coming. So, past maybe now 15 years ago, he accepted that he reached to the first paths. There are 5 paths. Path of accumulation, path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, meditation. 4 way. Oh, no more learning. Oh, no more learning. That's the fun. So His Holiness emphasizes, now I have reached to that. So we need these kind of teachings. So he is giving this kind of teaching, for sure. It takes time, effort, and then most important, he always says, due to this teaching, I don't suffer. Because if you look at the person like His Holiness, he has so many things to handle. For us, just your own small life. But His Holiness thinks about the whole world. Tibet also have to think about China. All the countries. But then all this bad news has to inform to His Holiness Dalai Lama. And he has so enthusiastic to listen to it, answer to it, but it's not like he gets upset and his day is ruined. He gets the next person, he can laugh and bring sense of humor and give advice and cool down, and all those activities are there. For us, once something went wrong and then you say, I have no energy left. Still he has lots of energy, receiving almost 500 people every day in his 90s. Incredible. So, most important here, these dinarole tanda dungi ki namba thoma sungni kyo ki kuwe dungi ki namba thoma sungso sidu tambe manso dungi ki namba po ji yebe dungi chinju ji kema yachi so geri ki kani ane jiki chowa dungi sungro ji kema yachi chowa dungi ki kiye ki gyudela yang dungi diya samlo ji korche and dine taru se samlo di suedo ji kudos.
So the second line, the Buddha explained many forms of suffering and led his disciples to become disenchanted with psychic existence and recognize it as suffering. So the Buddha taught not just about one type of suffering, but many different types of suffering. And he didn't just teach about the feeling of suffering, but what is the cause of that suffering. and recognizing that also to be suffering.
Yes, do to be Duran San Madame Che, Ten, yes, I get Ten, Yuzan, I'm not doing it, get chokers.
So, and also not just thinking that of the cause of suffering, but recognizing that the base or the support for that suffering is also in the nature of suffering.
So we have this.
And then from that, wishing to become liberated from that.
So it's more like, it's a very, practice this because it's a very important. When you have all these negative emotions and everything coming up, then you have to say, it should become. So you normally say, it shouldn't be happening. But now as a practitioner, you have to accept that. You have to say, it has to come. Because all this suffering, because I have this body, I have this mind, all this are the base to bring all this positive and negative things. So then, I think this will calm you a little bit down. Because many of the situation, what happens is like, it is not supposed to happen. Then you cannot accept it. So acceptance. Because there's cause, there should be result. There's cause, if there's no obstacle, then there should be result. So this is the one of the simple, very profound teaching. Sometimes we known as a law of causality. Mena minjung se mena minjung jawa se na Quran dia ulane hoyo dan dikadu de la dungendi digurwa dungendi yu chogis kajen se gyudwas te lapsa du jambe karsona gyudni yu chogwas pena alamso taji ku yorwa jo ko to dana chuji me de towa yu ches towa yu na
So there's this presentation of this relationship of if that doesn't exist, then that won't arise, or if this doesn't exist, then that won't arise. And so it's just the relationship of cause and effect. If so the fact that there's a result, then necessarily it was preceded by a cause, by its cause, yeah. And so they quote a sign as an example to prove that. Like, take on a Smoky Mountain Pass, there is fire because there is smoke. If smoke exists, then it was necessarily preceded by fire. So if smoke exists, then fire exists. Like that, this relationship of causality. If the cause doesn't exist, the result doesn't. If the cause does exist, then, or if the result exists, necessarily the cause exists.
또 디체위나 엔디 쇼타라라 테네 랑 동이 저서로 통하네 텔레 타반도 바나 동에 된 도고버 통하라 대한 주 만도는 민도바 시니 이니 디주 지도시 냠도 군중기 때문에 시에버로 집에 뒤우로 군중기 때문에 송소 따다보셔.
So then this directly leads on to the next passage. Once you recognize suffering, you see yourself as submerged in an ocean of suffering and realize that if you want to be liberated from suffering, you must counteract it. Moreover, you recognize that you cannot stop suffering unless you counteract its cause. By investigating the cause of suffering, you come to understand its true origin. Consequently, the Buddha spoke next about the truth of origin.
다디 군중기 때문에 아니 방고도 쓰려니 군중기 때문에 군중 쓰려 동해 군 용사기 시디 딱 가만히래샤 쓰려 좀 따져지 연도 아니 되네 코베 돈에 사지기 레게 받았어 사지기 레게 받아 레디 가만히 무슨 녀몽이 게 받아 아니 녀몽이 잡아대 등진도 시비 군중기 denpa xie dengzing yang do nöber tong ta dengzing do nöber tong sidu jambe tika do xini dengzing la nyambo yoba nyambo de yang dengzing Dangzindi de la Sha, and Yabu Shabaji Kayon, Gijambaji, Dangzindi, Yu Chinjilo Biba, Dinzan Chinjilo, the Shuwa Imbaji, Moshabata to yours. Madoji, Dangzindi, the Mabasuya Chedo, Nian Tamato Shara Wongo Dosu, Niba Kayon, Gijamapche, Dangzin Kurang, all the day on the Zambi, the more Lobo Imbadu, Samatan, do Zambi, Dharamsala.
So next you develop an understanding of the truth of the origin, an understanding that contaminated karma produces the suffering of cyclic existence, that afflictions produce karma, and that the conception of the self is the root of the afflictions. So here the truth of origin, in Tibetan is called Kungjung. Here it just says origin, but it's like all, origin of all. That word is not included in the name here, origin. So it's like the origin or the source of all the suffering. Yeah. So next you develop an understanding of the truth of the origin, an understanding that contaminated karma produces the suffering of cyclic existence, and that afflictions produce karma, and that the conception of the self is the root of the afflictions. And when you see that, you can eliminate the conception of self, and you are about to realize its cessation. So here we can recognize that here the conception of self, or this self-grasping, it's not just thinking, the conception of the self is a wrong consciousness, I need to find its antidote, which is the wisdom realizing selflessness. We don't even need to look there, just recognizing that grasping at a self, or the conception of the self itself, is a wrong consciousness, that it holds its object in completely the wrong way. Recognizing that itself is the antidote to grasping at the self, or the conception of the self.
Rāwa kāntas tōngwa sē tu tsāmbi, tā tī tu tsāma kēsā kī shē tī dāngzīng kī chē kī tu tsāmbi, dāngzīng tī lō chīnchī lō yīmbā tī ngō shē na, anī tātā tam chī dāngzīng tēn kē wā tu, dāngzīng kī shīng yū mē bā chī tōngwa tā rāng kī, anī tī kē kī tīpū yōng chōng gā tū tu sī. Tī kī tu tsāmbi, tēnē ngī dōngyē mē bā sū tu sā rē, nyōmō mē bā sū tu sā rē,
So, in think of this, then you get this hope to be able to overcome it. So, and it's through recognizing that the grasping at the self, or the conception of the self, is itself a wrong holding. It holds its object in completely the wrong way. Recognizing that, then you get this hope to be able to overcome it. And so then you look for the antidote, or the way to overcome it, recognizing that through realizing that the object that is clinged to by the conception of the self doesn't exist. Yeah, so recognizing the lack of the object that is clinged to by that conception of the self, or the self-grasping, through that then you can overcome that self-grasping by realizing its object doesn't exist. And so by able to recognize that, then you're able to stop the conception of the self, or the self-grasping, and then through that you're able to stop the arising of the afflictions, which then puts a stop to the arising of karma, which then puts a stop to the suffering. So we have this real hope. We see that there's a way to overcome it all.
Mm-hmm. So this is our refuge. So in Buddhism, this is our main refuge. So this is where now we bow down. Yeah. Not because the Buddha is a holy person, not the Sangha is just a holy person, because these two beings holds this teaching, can give this teaching, and then I can achieve this, I can attain this, I can bring the cessation towards myself. So then this kind of cessation is our main refuge. So that's why it's saying here, Gogwe Tamje Diu Moto, Gogwe Deba Sunso. Ta Dilla Toba Chungseji Jeje. Wana Dugdin Dembana, Ne Tabala, and Deba Jeba, Dugdin Wodo, and Golden Temple Resource. Dunya Deba Yawoji Sheshabina, and the Wall Yanamsan Kunjung Shebu with Wa, and the issue de la Namsan, Tabashin, the Lucajans and Dumi, some local to the Dumi, Namshad, Watch Condos and Lamsan, Tardu Legal was. Tardu somebody was in the Tobaji Jeche, nothing and Johnson.
So when you see that you can eliminate the conception of the self, you will vow to realize its cessation, which is also the cessation of suffering. Thus the Buddha spoke next about the truth of suffering. So through recognizing that it's possible to overcome the cause of suffering, this conception of the self, then one develops this really strong hope for liberation, or the desire, striving for liberation. And you recognize that true cessation is possible. So wishing that when you recognize that it's possible, then you develop this really strong desire for achieving liberation, because you see that it's possible to bring this true cessation, this end to the suffering. And so then the Buddha spoke next about the truth of cessation.
Yeah. So it's more like if person have a strong understanding about the truth of suffering now, then automatically the person will ask about liberation. He will have liberation. He will ask for the cessation. So this, according to the Four Noble Truth, you don't need to talk about the the cause of the suffering, because the person, when he really sees the suffering, he wants to get the cessation. I want to cease the suffering. So then you can talk about cessation, not the cause of the suffering. So if this kind of a doubt appears for the practitioner, then the answer is Diradwa. Shenas, Gyuntini, Chi, Gyunti Medi, Ti, Dungin Shibu Gopa, Tona, Nyambe, Tandu Yujans, Dungin Gyung Mazinjing, Gudin Donusum Matungwe, the Negachuche. Gopa Mondo Chawu Nyamdo, Tabala, Tober, Tobjer, Mizimichirus, Taba, Tondo Yobainaya, Taba Tondo, Sinisamaji. 미기비 좀 가져졌을라나 아니 동이 깨버려 동이 유디하고 좀 맞으나 동이 까고 삼나 까투에요 말았어 어디 내가 좀.
So in the reply, there is no mistake why at this point, after you recognize the truth of suffering, you have a desire for liberation and think, if only I could attain cessation that relieves the suffering. But if you have not identified the cause of suffering and have not seen that you can eliminate that cause, you do not yet regard liberation as something attainable, and thus do not think, I will realize cessation. So it's expressing the fault of, you just think, I wish I could be free from suffering, I want to achieve the cessation from suffering, but if we don't understand the cause of the suffering, then there's no way for us to have this understanding, this way to achieve the cessation from suffering.
So, for that reason, in the middle scope, it focuses so much on the cause of the suffering. Unless you don't just having wish to get a liberation after quite having understanding on the truth of suffering, and automatically you feel like, I want a cessation, I want a liberation. People might say this is too fast, because you don't have the complete understanding of the liberation yet. So that's why we need to bring quite good understanding of the karma and the reflection, and how it brings the 레준직다 디닐 디니 겨와다 뭐지 고르자고스.
So without understanding the presentation of causality of actions and their results, recognizing that through our actions we have the results of continually cycling in samsara or cyclic existence.
So in some of the practices, in Tantra also, Dzogchen Chenpo and many texts, because this becomes very important to have a complete understanding of to wish to get a liberation becomes very important. Not just thinking like I have so much suffering in this life, I want to get liberation. That is not enough. You are not getting the full picture yet. So in order to do that, I have seen a few masters. Sometimes they say today one of my very good friend. He practiced so funny sometimes, very funny. Sometimes today he said I feel like I'm in hell. He will scream. I feel like he's going crazy. So he will scream. He will say like, "Oh, it's so burning," or so he will. Actually, it's not burning, but he is really trying to make this picture to feeling like if I didn't practice well, and I can see this in the future lives how that. This how it is suffering, the chain of the suffering will still continue. And then sometimes he will dress very well like I'm a god. But sometimes I feel his practice quite extreme. But somehow I can connect to his practice that he's trying to practice this one. Also some of the practitioners, some of my students, my friends, when we discuss, so when they have quite enough of the problem in this life, they were always ready to do Dharma practice and look for answer of the liberation. But then here it's Lama Tsongkhapa is giving such a bit instruction, saying, unless you not only wish to get rid of from the suffering, but if you don't have a wish to get rid of the cause of the sufferings, then it's not a complete picture. So then it becomes a quite important. So 제가 교인들 메디체도 되지 뭐 마싱징 유디 동료수 마통에 고봉도 제비냥도 타바 토벌 민진비 치료스 딜로사와 오케이 대대로 타바 고봉도 자고님도 증바나 대를 남 강이 냠도 남기 때바 나주베 남기 때바 탐을 송소스 다 데이도 제 다시네 남기 류스네레 다 코와스네레 아니 코 아주 코와스도 동인디 용서기 아니 주 용수 저거라 아니 코와니를 토네 아니 동해디 기지기 주 탐제라니 얘기 디 빵버 차고 냐비 삼로디 레온도 아니 신이 디 빵야기다 람 탑카르레 슬라도 좀 신이 다 주어도 자주 보시고 저도 람데 스치진 담을 줄레스.
So, thinking of all the different types of the suffering in samsara and the causes of bringing that about, how to overcome all of that and recognize it's possible to achieve this complete cessation, this elimination of all of the suffering in samsara. Then, only then does the thought arise, or the question arise, what is the path that will bring that about? So in this way, when you think, I shall realize a cessation that is liberation, you become interested in the truth of the path, wondering about the path that leads to this cessation. For this reason, the Buddha spoke about the truth of the path last.
다들 이 게라치고 쇼레 이 지디 귤라막 지디 로셔는 템리스타도 내내 시제 내기 중에 방차라 내내 토제 매니 템버 차와다 동행 주다다 당고 대신람 시제 방차 레버 차 템버 차 시송도 되는 대신이 태고치주 군도 가자 군도 렌 도마르 송신 능세 디고도 지로다.
So then this is really incredible and important verse from the Sublime Continuum, Maitreya. So in the same way the Sublime Continuum says, recognize that you are ill, eliminate the cause of the illness, attain health, rely on a remedy. Likewise, you should recognize, eliminate, attain and rely upon suffering, its cause, its cessation and the path respectively. This being the case, the four truths are taught repeatedly throughout the Mahayana and the Hinayana.
It's on the painting or something here. They use some other. Sometimes they put on the painting.
Is this verse written on any of the paintings around
I think
the hall in Tushita? Perhaps it is one of these verses.
Some monasteries they put that because this is very important. Yeah. Anyway, that in my law na digi that turned that it's 12. We start maybe 10 minutes late, so I'm good with mathematics. So actually I'm not. So let's do maybe 5-10 more minutes. Core Jubata telling Dobe, Nanam, they worship hold to the person who raised hand. Who was that? Somebody raised hand for a question or something? I saw some. Oh yeah. So after that, so after break, okay. Core Dunga telling Dobe, Nanam, they worship Duba Yimbe, Nam Druba Chindu Kejin. So I wanted to tell you this. The Four Noble Truth, it is the foundation for the whole teaching of the Buddha, or every teaching of the Buddha has to have these four teachings. Tantra, Sutra, also in the
higher training ethics.
Higher training ethics. In a Theravada system, everyone should have that. So without this, how much you say, I'm practicing Tantra, that's not Buddhism. That's not how the Buddha was taught. So you have seen this, the quotation. 대단히 대신이 대과치 중뿐이나. So 코발로 주고도 텔렌도베 나는 대월시비기 두바이베 대월시비기 두바이베 남들 두바세도 잡에 최 간디지 숨보이네 디나무 두디 지레스. 최고 산지기 최고 간디지 고르이나야 디나무 두비지 고요. 대바시나 두바이베 남들 두발라 세도 잡에 아니 소소소소 저바단치 타바tum 톰도 유년지라 마디게 버도 그랬어. 신도 개체와 인신 냠된지 가동장 체외 림바타터도 아서 테터도서 로마치고 됐어. 마음바라야 수수기 미샤바로 람된체외네. 네가 하나 치고 그랬으마도 티나셔 봐요 말했어. 두덴스함베고네 코알라 셴로 네마시메나 타바톤도 직점도 드웨 지지 군중도 돌아서 군중도 비교를 하고 있어. 군중 삼백권에 코웨게 자월 녀모바다 녀모바나 레버 미시나 벤 마통베 다 내가 따라 남기네 체증 będzie ta inna 신체소나 체증 시벌을 들을 남마 임벌 임벌을 손에 냐와 Dibu member Gurichiro, Kadam Bush, Devil Dibutin Martin, Shoulder dance, that loved the Dutch Monastery. Did you watch it?
Continuing on, so again, this being the case, the four truths are taught repeatedly throughout the Mahayana and the Hinayana. Since the Sugata has included in the four truths the vital points concerning the process of psychic existence and its cessation, this teaching is crucial for achieving freedom. And since this is a synoptic outline of practice is important, it must be taught to students in just this order. So there's this emphasis that all of the Buddha's teachings are condensed into this presentation of the four truths. Everything that we need to practice is condensed into these four truths. So all of the wheel turnings, all of the cycle of teachings that the Buddha gave, they're all contained within this presentation of the four truths. So again, since the Sugata has included in the four truths the vital points concerning the process of psychic existence and its cessation, this teaching is crucial for achieving freedom. So we have to have this, when we have this wish to achieve freedom, then we need to rely on these teachings of the four truths, the presentation of the four truths. And since this synoptic outline of practice is important, it must be taught to students in just this order. Why? Unless you reflect on the truth of suffering to the point of actually becoming revolted by psychic existence, your desire to attain liberation will be mere words. And whatever you do will lead to the origins of further suffering. So it's just going to be more causes for suffering. So unless you reflect on the origin of suffering until you have a good understanding of the root of psychic existence, which is karma and the afflictions, you will be like an archer who does not see the target. You will miss the essential points of the path. You will mistake, so this is all that we've already just been mentioned, right? So you will mistake what is not a path to freedom from psychic existence for the path and exhaust yourself without result. So finally, if you fail to understand the need to eliminate suffering and its origin, you will also fail to recognize the liberation that provides relief from suffering and its origin. And hence your interest in liberation will be mere conceit.
That sounds quite important, isn't it? Very important, actually. So not only the Lama Tsongkhapa and the Buddha is telling this is important, but we need to feel it's necessary. Feel this is important. So all this will become important once you come to the position where you feel my one mission is to tame my own mind. If I cannot tame my own mind, I will be never peaceful. I will never get the peace. So this most important, you need to hold to the position. If you lose this position, then how much you practice, it looks like optional, and you will feel like, yeah, that sounds very good. If I have time, I can do it. And if I don't have time, and then people say, oh, in the West we are so busy working, so we don't have time to practice. And then Lama should be very careful, because they already said we don't have a time. Then we say, oh, you don't have a time, okay. So then do it very slowly like that. Actually, here it's not talking about doing some recitations, making some kind of prostrations, doing mandala, or what other rituals. We are not asking anything here. The real Dhamma is not that. This wish to control your own mind, thought, tame your mind. In the office, when your boss, annoying boss, and your colleagues, when they make some kind of acquisitions or some kind of whatever through anger, what they say, harsh words to you, you are with this motivation to look into your own thoughts. It's beautiful. It's not like now. I trained in my house for a few minutes, for hours. What from India, I learned this, how to practice that. So now to see how I'm doing good, try. We will fail for sure, but it's a good try, which we never tried in our life. So we try 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And the more you need support, and then you definitely will get. So that is Dharma. And then in order to, this kind of a Dharma is called a liberating path. I told you before. You wanted to liberate from your emotions. So you want that. So you feel like, now I'm not liberated, I cannot control my own negative emotions, and then I wanted to summon other practices. Then there is not only liberating path, then there is kind of support method, which is also ripening path, which is like compassion, to think about the kindness of others, so-called bodhicitta, so-called awe. But first, you really need to feel, I need to liberate from which is chained through all this negative emotion. I wanted to clear this out. If this is gone, then how much you say mantra, how much you say that, it looks like a black magic. You wanted to put a spell on others. You're full on spell, and you want to put that on others. Yeah, so this way Lama Tsongkhapa put it is the A to Z his own practice in here. So we are so fortunate to go through that. So now we take a break, then see you back at 3:30. Om Zaji Meji Joji Medatam Riradi Gembari Sangye Jindu Migye Vavai Tumananda Jinra Jabarajo Jetsun Lame Guzera Deji Nanga Chinge Jodi Gebada Lozan Denbe Jemir Sazungi Lore Muzela Dole Yuji Idam Guru